Welcome to the public reading for WAL 2023. I'm Gina Victoria Schaefer, a professor of English here at Saddleback College, who serves as faculty advisor for our award-winning campus publication.
I'm Farah Salam, editor-in-chief of WAL 2023. We'll be your host this evening as we invite your imagination to take wing through poems, personal narratives, short stories, art, and photography on the pages of this year's journal's all work created by students at Saddleback.
Speaking of taking wing, Farah is such a steadfast and dedicated editor that she literally flew down here from Seattle, where she now lives, just to be here tonight. Thank you, Farah. I would like to begin by acknowledging that Saddleback College is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded homelands of the Hashimin Nation, the indigenous people of Orange County and the Saddleback Valley area. Since time immemorial, they have lived and worked alongside Kalaupa, Wooded Place, the sacred mountain after which Saddleback College was named. We honor their spiritual connection as the original and current stewards and caretakers of the ocean and this land. This acknowledgement is only one step towards a meaningful partnership with Native peoples as we strive to reckon with the impact of settler colonialism and genocide on their communities and homelands. We're grateful to the Hashimin Nation and honor their cultural heritage and beliefs, which remind us of the sacred relationship between the people and the place we now call Saddleback College. This event is being sponsored and funded by the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Student Development Office, and the Associated Student Government Budget Committee. I want to give a special thanks to the faculty, administrators, and staff, some of whom are here this evening. Dr. Elliott Stern, president of Saddleback College, Tramvo Kumamoto, vice president of instruction, Dean Christina Hinkle, Assistant Dean Jessica Cavan, Havar Akhtar, Yvonne Bellardis, and Angel Granados of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, English Department Chairs Catherine Hayter and Ray Zimmerman. Also thanks to Dean Scott Farthing, Professors Ariel Alexander, Barbara Holmes, and Bill McGuire, and Matt Brodet, all of the School of Arts, Media, Performance, and Design. Finally, Chris Hargraves, Jacqueline Zimbalist, and Rachel Roberts of the Student Development Office. Please see the back of your program for a more complete list of the faculty, staff, and administrators who support WAL. Thank you for contributing your time, energy, and resources toward making this event possible. And I'd like to invite Dean Christina Hinkle up to say a few words. Dean Hinkle?
We had a feeling that she wouldn't do this herself, but we need to honor Professor Schaefer because without her, this event would not be taking place. And so Professor Schaefer is an example, a perfect example of what the English department is. They do a fantastic job of combining passion and kindness. And I've worked with a lot of folks on campus, and I can't tell you, that combination, that two together, is actually pretty rare. We do really well at passion. We're very passionate, we put it out there. But combining those two is a rarity. And so for an entire department to embody that, for faculty to embody that, Professor Schaefer is the embodiment of that. So I want to make sure that we acknowledge her and we thank her because this is a labor of love. I've met with Professor Schaefer probably more times on her sabbatical than I have with some of my chairs. So it shows you just how passionate and dedicated and kind and compassionate she is. So thank you so much, and please say thank you to me.
But thank you to all of you who are here. Dr. Elliott Stern is here. Our chancellors, Marcia Melchiker and Terry Rydell, thank you so much. Please acknowledge them for being here.
So now in its 23rd year, WAL is produced every spring by students enrolled in English 160, a class that engages them in working hands on reviewing submissions of literature and art, selecting the works that will be featured, editing them, and designing the pages and cover. It's a painstaking and precise process, but well worth all the effort, especially since the journal has been receiving awards in national competitions among college literary magazines every year since 2012.
So far this year, the 2022 edition of WAL has been honored with a first place Best Magazine Award from the Community College Humanities Association and is a finalist in the prestigious Magazine Pacemaker Awards sponsored by the Associated Collegiate Press, the country's largest and oldest national membership organization for college student media.
Tonight's public reading is especially significant because it's the first time the event has been held in person since 2019 due to the coronavirus pandemic. From 2020 to 2022, the reading has been presented virtually on YouTube. These past 3 years have been stressful for all of us, but 2023 represents a reprieve. When I was searching for a thematic focus for this year's issue of WAL, I noticed that many of the stories and poems reflected themes of self-acceptance, strength, hope, and healing. As you can see, there's motifs up there. We ended up incorporating these motifs of an involving butterfly and flower to reflect the changes as we go through to achieve self-fulfillment. As I write in my editor's note, like a budding flower or a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, we gather the strength and resilience to unfold our true selves.
To embody these themes, this year's cover presents the image of a dragonfly, a symbol of transformation, self-realization, and new beginnings in many cultures. The mystical winged creature is the focus of a song by Nako, a folk, rock, hip-hop, and R&B vocalist whose name, which means little bear, reflects his Native American ancestry. Written when he was 18 years old, the song explores his coming of age as a survivor of a traumatic family legacy who is in the midst of personal transformation. Reflecting on the inspiration behind the song, he observes, "I learned about resistance. I survived that which could have yielded heavier consequences, but the ghost of that child lived on. Finding the courage to seek and confront myself becoming was the single most greatest gift I received on the wings of that psychedelic dragonfly." So this is the song, Dragonfly.
You should put that cigarette out. You should have faith in my mouth. Like my mother, like your son, like my temperamental lungs. Each piece fits into the next. Like I'm not black and I'm not white. Both reveal me in my sight. You've got twinkles in your eyes. You say vegetarians save lives, but there's your wings despite my back. There's your baby's bassinet. Will there be one more of me? Close my eyes and try to hide from my form of dragonfly. Woke in the woods, chipped and peeled vehicle hoods. In that van under the covers, I've been stealing from my lover. Moments I cannot replace. To my former dragonfly, I resist and I survive. I've brought this too. Logic, loss of mine pull through. But what's that say of my character? I retreat back into nature. Will there be one more of me? To my form of dragonfly, I resist and I survive. Survive. I survive. I survive. This is resistance. I survive. I survive. I survive. This is resistance. I survive.
That was a beautiful song. Survival, resilience, and transformation in the face of conflicts are recurring themes in many of the works in this year's Wall. These concepts surface as undercurrents in the imaginative and intimate short story, Love, Lithium, and its Geology, by our first featured author, Daniel Wheelock.
Hi, everybody. Wow, this is really cool. My name is Daniel. A little bit about myself. I was an English major way back when, in the 2000s, early 2000s, at San Diego State. I ended up getting a job in real estate and didn't touch anything creative writing related for about a decade. Interest rates rose, my work got a little slow, and I had some free time, so I decided to take some creative writing here at Saddleback, and that's what led me to be right here where I am tonight. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the process of me writing this interesting, kind of weird story, but it was my final for my English 3 class with Professor Fisher. She's the one who encouraged me to submit it to the Wall. I wasn't going to. And the original version was a lot longer. I had to be pretty ruthless with the editing and revising and chopping, and that's a pretty tough thing to do when you have worked on something for a long time. So I wanted, as our introduction stated, I wanted to write a story about kind of a love story that took place during COVID. It was a very challenging time, very lonely time for a lot of people. And I wanted to write 2 kind of opposite characters that were an unlikely pairing. Yeah, so we have this hippie, Leslie, who's very new agey and free-spirited, and then her counterpart, Mark, who is, kind of a Debbie Downer, kind of, just a gloomy guy. And they kind of hit it off and balance each other out in a certain way. And I wanted to use the term ichthyology. My uncle is a marine biologist, so thanks to him for that one. That's the study of fish, the scientific study of fish. So, and I refer to Leslie as a fish woman because I got the idea to make her a mermaid. So I'm not really still sure if she's an actual mermaid or if she's just a metaphorical. In my first draft, she was very much a literal mermaid, and I realized I had inadvertently copied a scene from the movie Splash, and so I changed that a little bit. But it was during that revision that I kind of tightened it up and got to more of a theme. And one of the themes that is throughout is this idea that cold water, Mark has an aversion to it. It kind of represents his depression and anxiety and his fears. And Leslie has no fear of the cold water. She jumps right in. And I learned a lot revising. That was the hardest part. Definitely, I think writing is the revising. And just wanted to say that when I signed up for these classes, never in a million years did I think I'd be standing up here to talk about what I wrote or that anyone would be reading words that I wrote. It's an honor, and I thank everybody for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel. So, by the way, we're presenting excerpts from the longer work. So if you really want to know the ends of these stories, you have to read them. So we're going to leave you with cliffhangers, including with this story. To present an excerpt from Daniel's story, we're pleased to introduce oral interpreters. Esther Chun will portray the narrator. Esther, who holds a BA in English Literature from UC Berkeley and a law degree from UC Davis, has performed in short films and plays, including the roles of Queen Gertrude in Hamlet and Mary Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. Lizzie Calvano, a theater arts major who aspires to act in television and film, will play the role of Leslie. Mike Canahui, who deeply enjoys reading and is excited for the academic journey ahead of him, will read the part of Mark.
Mark had always planned on telling the mermaid. Eventually, just not yet. Not when things were going so well. His chronic depression wasn't the easiest thing to disclose to a new girlfriend at the best of times. But with the mermaid, everything was trickier. She was a woman of new age sensibilities, a force of life, crunchier than the organic granola she habitually grazed, always rambling on about healing the body and mind through the energy of nature and the ocean, and little gift shop crystals propped on the nightstand next to her lumpy futon. Western medicine was the greatest evil. Everything from aspirin to Flintstone vitamins she considered malicious poisons. How could Mark tell that beautiful, exuberant fishwoman that he was popping 3 different antidepressants daily just to scrape by? They met back at the start of the pandemic, those early days when panic was spreading. That was when Mark first fell for the mermaid, or rather, a Turkish vegan with huge feet. Lean and lovely, browned by the sun, she was a sea creature if ever there was one, her toes eternally sandy. She told him to call her Leslie. She'd just returned home after years of traveling the world, cage diving with behemoth great whites in South Africa, ice bathing off the frigid coast of Denmark, motorbiking through the Nicaraguan jungle in search of the perfect wave. She'd done it all, lived the life of a surfer turned yogi, a life brimming with exploration and adventure, the kind of life Mark had always dreamt about, but had never been happy or brave enough to reach for. He'd always been the downhearted sort, a proverbial party pooper. It was a predisposition, the way he acted, a chemical imbalance that darkened certain lobes of an otherwise shining mind, as if he were stuck watching a colorful world through a dingy DMV window. The drugs helped a little. A daily deluge of pharmaceuticals allowed Mark to function for decent chunks of time at the office. After crashing back home, alcohol brought it all back down to the familiar depths, where the water was just right. He would sit on his couch in silence, swigging 2 buck chuck straight from the bottle, pickling in despair, waiting for his phone to buzz. Each dating app ding, a brief burst of dopamine in an otherwise isolated existence. That was when the fishwoman entered his life. Her love of living was infectious and intoxicating. As news of the rising pandemic death toll spread through the airwaves, she grew increasingly alarmed.
This is so depressing.
Tell me about it.
I just wish I could help the poor people. COVID really does a number on the chakras.
Yeah, the chakra stuff is the worst part, I hear.
You're such a doofus.
They spent the summer months at the beach, basking in sunshine, trying to tune out the dour tidings that surrounded them. Mark was becoming more amphibious by the day, swimming next to Leslie, trying to keep up. He'd weaned himself off his drinking habit since Leslie didn't touch the stuff, ate vegan with her every other night. His pale skin grew tan and taut as his small beer belly receded. They practiced yoga on the sand, a struggle considering Mark's lack of limberness, but the effects were undeniable. Mark looked good, or at the very least, better. More importantly, he felt like $1,000,000, all thanks to the mermaid. It had been 6 months, however, and Mark continued to hide his prescription bottles every time Leslie spent the night at his apartment. Love, or infatuation, was turning out to be the strongest antidepressant of all. But still, Mark faithfully choked down his handful of pills every morning, not ready to ditch his chemical crutches just yet. He knew he'd waited too long to tell Leslie, but things were improving, his outlook steadily brightening. He hoped that if he had just kept hanging out with the mermaid, his depression would resolve itself. Then he could flush away those tiny orange pills and she would be none the wiser. Summer gave way to fall, and fall to winter. Mark told Leslie he would take her anywhere she wanted, but their options were limited with the pandemic raging like wildfire. It was then that he suggested a trip to the mountains and maybe renting a snowy cabin where the two could get cozy and watch old movies next to a crackling hearth. It was settled. Mark rented a cabin near the lake, and on a cold and drizzly December day, the two set out for their alpine weekend. After an hour and a half of white-knuckled snow chain driving, past stranded cars and the plows digging them out, they arrived. Once inside, he started making their dinner, vegan chili, when he heard Leslie yell from the bedroom.
I'm gonna move your suitcase. It's in the way of the dresser.
Okay.
What is this?
I take those for depression sometimes.
Lithium carbonate.
Yeah.
There are other bottles in your pack. You take all of those? Jesus, Mark, how bad is your depression?
It hasn't been bad for a while, babe. Not since I've met you.
But you're still taking them.
Yes, I am.
Do you know how toxic this stuff is?
I
Did you even try going vegan before you started taking those poisons? Acupuncture, meditation? Things must have been pretty bad for you to take this shit. Have you ever been suicidal?
mean, maybe once or twice. I've never made any attempts or anything like that.
Leslie brought her hands to her face, wiping away tears. The thought of Mark teetering so close to death seemed to be too much for her to bear.
I need a walk alone.
Just like that, she was gone, leaving the cabin silent and cold. Mark sat down at the table, staring at the little bottle of pills, before burying his head in his hands.
Wow, that was a wonderful performance. So we're now moving forward with, let's see, Wall's visual identity is the result of innovative work by a team of graphic designers, including Yasmina Roish, known professionally as Jazz, an artist who pursued a 4-year education in graphic design and photography at Saddleback College. She earned a graphic design certificate. Working with the team of Wall has greatly enriched her professional path. Her photograph, Heart of Stone, was the product of a stroll on the beach that suddenly turned into a photo shoot. She might think this whole image is manipulated, but the only real manipulation is the red color. Yasmina found a heart-shaped stone and thought it would be neat to place it somewhere so she could capture more of the beach and waves as a background. She was surprised to find another rock with a hole in it, which turned out to be just perfect fit for the heart. The whole image almost makes a perfect fit for this year's edition of Wall. As Yasmina's cover design, the intention was to extend the artwork seamlessly through the back cover and make it look like one large image. The font was adjusted to the theme, and the style and the color of the font were chosen to complement the overall look.
The captivating image that graces the cover of Wall 2023 is the product of Elaine Pike's artistry. We're pleased that she is here this evening to reveal the process through which she shaped this indelible icon.
Hi, everyone. It's different when you're sitting there and to see everybody. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I do want to acknowledge and thank you, Professor Schaefer. When I got the email that my artwork had been selected for the cover, of course, it was like complete. I had to read it like 3 times. I couldn't believe it. But what I do want to acknowledge also is Jasmina for her wonderful work in being able to take this image and so beautifully incorporate it into the cover. So, and also to the staff of the Wall, thank you. I did bring it. It's the original right here. And I'm going to go ahead and discuss it with you in a moment. But I did want to acknowledge one of the first things I did when I got the email was I went and grabbed my 2022 edition of the Wall. And I just started leafing through it, and I happened to notice in the mission statement of the Wall that I didn't write it down to read it, so the gist is that it's an open space for creative experimentation. And that is exactly what this was. A year ago, I was enrolled in Professor Evans' Alternative Digital Processes class, which is offered through the photography department. And it is what it sounds like. We do a little cyanotype, we do some photo weave, we made books, we did a lot of fun things. And one of the things that we did in that class was photo transfer. And most people did their photo transfer on canvas, or some people did it on tennis shoes, they did it on cloth, they did it on glass, metal, wood. But I had taught myself a little bit about the art of encaustic wax in the summer of 2022. And so I was curious to see whether or not I could transfer a photo image into wax. So that is what this is. And this is the original right here. It's small, 8 by 8. And basically what I did was I searched for stock images. These are not my own. The foreground is what I saw first. And as you can tell, I'm kind of drawn to teal and turquoise. I think it's because I'm a Sagittarius and that's like my birthstone. I don't know. Anyway, so I went ahead and I took the foreground image first. I printed it on a matte presentation paper. And when you work in encaustic, for those of you that might not know what encaustic is, it is essentially beeswax. And it is, to the beeswax, there's a little bit of resin that's added to it, and that's what gives it durability, so it doesn't get gouged or scratched or anything. It's not soft, it hardens just a slight bit. And it has to be on a substrate, so this is the substrate that I adhere it to. So I went ahead and printed it and put it on this wood substrate, and I applied several layers of wax to it and let it cool, and then I put it down for a couple of days because I didn't really know what was coming out of the wax, although I had a vision that something was emerging from the wax. So I started looking through images and happened to find this one of a dragonfly, and it seemed to work for me. So I went ahead and printed it on just regular paper, regular copier paper, with archival pigmented ink. And that's key, that's very important, because what I ended up doing was putting another layer over the top, and when it's almost cool, slightly still warm and malleable, I burnished it into the wax, not knowing at all if it was going to be a success. I had no idea if that ink was going to stay captured in the wax the way it did. And so that was the big part of the experiment. The magic begins when you take some water and you put water on top of the paper, and you start pushing, slowly pushing that paper off of the top of the wax. And what's left is the image that you see right here. So for me, it was just a huge experiment. And I really didn't know what it was gonna turn out to be. And of course, as you said, I never in a million years thought I'd be standing here explaining this to people at the time that I did it, but I'm glad that it worked for this issue of the wall, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present my artwork to you. I've been here I started off taking drawing classes and then went into watercolor, but photography is really my thing. And so I've been I think it's been since September 2020 that I've been taking photography classes here. And I think I have about 2 more to go. So anyway, that's my story, and that's what this is. So now you can see the artwork. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine, for sharing your artwork. It was interesting to hear about the process. So we've all been seeing headlines flashing in newspaper pages, on television sets, and over cell phone screens about the harmful effects of social media. In her poem, Surviving the Scroll, Kelly Dobb intimately captures the insidious impact of the social comparison that stems from constantly scrolling through our media feeds. In a collaborative venture with WAL, students in Professor Ariel Alexander's music composition class created original pieces inspired by the work of 2 poets featured in WAL 2023. The poets selected student compositions that most closely matched their literary vision, creating a synthesis of sound and sense. After Kelly introduces herself, you'll hear the original music composed by Anthony Aguilar to accompany Kelly's reading of her poem.
Okay. Just before the reading, I got word that Kelly is unfortunately sick and couldn't make it, so I will give a little bit of introduction, and then we will play the recording of her voice with the music. Kelly is a part-time photographer, writer, and digital designer who served as a personal narrative editor for WAL Literary Journal in 2021. She's also a mother to 4 beautiful children. Kelly is currently working towards finishing her degree. Though new to the world of submitting her work for possible publication, she's been writing short stories, plays, and poetry for nearly 25 years. So this is her poem.
Surviving the Scroll by Kelly Dobb. See what they're doing? See what they've done? Scroll, scroll, scroll. That looks fun. Jealousy, longing, hope, strife. Keep pressing forward. Stay alive. See how they're living. See how they've lived. Scroll, scroll, scroll. What I would give. Admiration, desperation, sadness, dive, slow spiral downward. Stay alive. See what they're creating. See what they've made. Scroll, scroll, scroll. You have what it takes. Establish. Innovate. Distraction. Denied. Sink into darkness. Survive. Survive.
Serving as editor-in-chief of WAL is an immensely challenging task that requires strong editorial and leadership skills, the ability to work cooperatively with staffers, a fine-tuned aesthetic sensibility, and a knack for tactfully revising and strengthening the work of writers. Farah sensitively and successfully performed all these tasks with energy and enthusiasm. In addition to lending her literary and artistic talents to the production of this year's WAL, Farah shared an intimate account of struggling with communication barriers in her delicately crafted personal narrative, Just Fine.
I didn't prepare for this part. Thank you again, Professor Schaefer. I feel like I think the opportunity of being editor-in-chief was such a great experience. I remember when we had to put down which staff positions we wanted, and I was like, poetry editor, copy editor, and then dead last editor-in-chief, oh, maybe. But I'm glad you pushed me, and I'm glad I got the chance to help create this journal. And I'm glad you created a safe space for all of us to share our stories. One of the things we had to do in English 160 was write personal narrative, a poem, and a short story, just to have an idea of what we're going to be selecting. And so I wrote this personal narrative for class, and I felt comfortable enough to share my communicative issues and my struggles with identity. So yeah. Just Fine. One day after swim class, when I was about 3, I laid across the pool's surface with my light palms exposed to the sun's soft rays. I remember seeing my mother out of the corner of my eye. She was dressed rather modestly in lots of florals, and her hijab was loosely draped around her head and shoulders. There was a glint of distress in her brown eyes as she was having an intense conversation with my swim instructor. When I emerged from the pool, they both broke their furrowed expressions and smiled. Suddenly, I was greeted with a beach towel and a friendly goodbye, without learning about what had been discussed. It wasn't until later that I found out my mother was rather appalled to hear that my instructor thought I could be autistic. The fact that I could barely speak was a real concern. But words didn't really matter much then, at least to me, since my swimming was just fine and I followed the instructions fairly well. It was brought up again, though, after a doctor's appointment later in the week. I communicated with made-up gestures and broken sounds, but despite this, my doctor, with his silver stethoscope adorned with various tiny stuffed bears, said in his monotone voice, "She's just fine," handing a root beer-flavored dum-dum lollipop on my way out. Between the ages of 6 and 9, I was able to use the English language fairly well, but there were a few times in the classroom when I was suddenly whisked away to a special room. In that special room, it felt dark and gray. A gold, rusty, big-eared mouse statue holding a book stood tall amongst the shelves. As he peered over the pages, he stared at me disapprovingly. But I was with a kind woman, a natural blonde with a nose ring. She had brought me various worksheets, all about grammar and sentence structure. It all seemed easy, yet I was confused as to why I was there. I was confused as to why I had to be stuck in this room, commandeered by this strange mouse, away from my other classmates. I remember feeling like I had to play dumb, even though I thought I was a little dumb. I remember my last day in that room when I chose to play it smart instead. The woman had said to me, "Oh, you don't need my help. You're just fine." Between the ages of 6 and 12, I went to Sunday school. There, I learned a lot about Islam and a little about Arabic itself. I could never process the Arabic language, which was the opposite of English, quite literally, as it was read backwards. I knew the Arabic alphabet fairly well, but then diacritical remarks were introduced and I felt lost. Yet, I still kept progressing and progressing, despite my inability to speak Arabic. The Sunday school teachers mainly cared that I was a practicing Muslim, so it didn't seem to matter anyway. It wasn't until the 6th grade that an Islamic instructor took issue with me. I didn't pray 5 times a day, and I still struggled to read a single line of Arabic. Whenever she looked at me, her hazel eyes were filled with a fiery disgust. She said to me, "Why are you here? You need to go back to the 3rd grade." That was hard to hear, but my mother took my side. She knew I was trying my best, especially since I was regarded as one of the top students the year prior. At the time, I was able to detail the story of the prophets with ease, but I guess as long as I couldn't utter a single phrase in Arabic, it didn't matter. So I was no longer enrolled in Sunday school. It helped during the 6th grade. My parents were also going through a divorce, so I could blame all my troubles, all my flaws on that. Why didn't I pray? Divorced parents. Why didn't I know Arabic? Divorced parents. Nothing more. Between the ages of 12 and 15, I suddenly became a horrific leader, one who was fascinated with the English language. It wasn't that I didn't like to read before then. In fact, I wanted to be an advanced reader. I craved an escape. Reality wasn't fun. It never really was. More and more, a life split between two dingy houses became disorienting as each house gradually filled up with black noise. And the noise kept pushing me out. Both of my parents had expectations, and it felt like I was failing them both. There were days when I found myself alone, out in the blazing sun, hugging tight the Sacramento heat. My blistering brown hands would peel like oranges. There were days where I sought refuge, looking for peace in a nearby library. When I was 16, I became a poet. I could not piece the words together to describe how I felt at the time, but poetry was my way to express how I felt. I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to practice normal, everyday grammar and sentence structure. I could just appreciate how words are. I could just appreciate how each syllable sounds, get caught in the euphony, and feel at peace with my melodied blanket of utterances and phrases. Poetry perfectly encapsulated the journey I was going through. I needed it as I grew distant from my parents, distant from my culture. When I entered college, it was a predominantly white school in a predominantly white town. San Luis Obispo was known as the happiest town in America, but I couldn't help but wonder if it was because there were barely any people of color, meaning barely any tension to begin with. Maybe it was all in my head. I felt like I was a stain on a blank canvas. I felt like everyone was staring at me, and there I was challenged a lot on my identity and ethnicity. Do you speak Spanish? Do you speak Farsi? Do you speak Arabic? Are you planning to learn your home language eventually? You speak English really well. Where are you from? Where were you born? What's Egypt like? Why are you studying English? What's your real name? Tell me how you actually pronounce your name. All the questions and statements became static. Nowadays, sometimes I think I still can't speak. I have an English degree and I can't find the words. I was an English major. Shouldn't I be an expert in language? I also never learned Arabic, and at this point, I've accepted the fact that I may never learn it in the future. I'm whitewashed, through and through, bleached by Western society. But from time to time, an Arabic accent slips through, and I'm reminded that I'm still an Egyptian. From time to time, I find myself explaining a new English word to my mother, and I'm reminded I'm still an American. Sometimes I think about how lucky I am and how wonderful it is to have two identities, and that it's okay that I'm still learning to be comfortable with both. Sometimes I wish I didn't need to speak, but I know I'm fine. Despite not finding the right words, I know I'll just be fine.
Thank you, Farah.
All right. So Feeling Just Fine is a state of mind captured in Self-Portrait 2 by Maya Tellez. There's also a hint of mischief in her gaze as a whimsical miniature cat straddles her shoulder. Maya is here to share observations on her artistry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Tellez, and I'm here to introduce myself and talk about my portrait that was featured in this year's Wall Literary Journal. I recently graduated from Saddleback this past spring semester with an associate's degree in studio arts and art history. When I started attending Saddleback back in fall of 2020, I had no idea what to expect from my first art class, especially since everything was online. But as weeks passed by and projects came along, I truly realized that art is what I want to do for a living. I am now attending Cal State University Long Beach to pursue a degree in animation. Thank you. So, growing up, I loved cartoons. I would never miss a premiere of my favorite show, and I would always go online to read fan theories on the next episode. When I was 12, I suddenly came to the realization that cartoons are hand-drawn by people. At that point, I thought to myself, maybe I could be an artist when I grow up. I had no idea that in 8 years, I would be studying studio art, learning the fundamentals of drawing, and drawing myself for my figure drawing final. Titled Self-Portrait 2, this is my final project for drawing from the Live Model 2. For this project, my task was to create a self-portrait using Conte pencils as the medium. Conte pencils, before that. So I wasn't familiar with this type of drawing tool. So luckily, my professor, he gave me a quick explanation on the medium. Conte pencils are a type of pencil that come in a limited palette of black, sanguine, and white. Though this palette is limited, it's actually great for portraits, since these various colors can blend into blacks, browns, and whites for elements such as skin, hair, and eyes. For this project, I also had to add a sentimentally valuable item. I took some time thinking on what to use, but when I came home after school that day, I had my aha moment. On my table was a little wooden cat figurine. Before we went off to different colleges, one of my closest friends from high school gifted me this cat, since we both love cats. We still talk frequently and send each other cat videos to this day. I immediately knew this cat was perfect for my project. So it was the last 2 weeks of the semester, and I was in a real time crunch for this drawing. But my first step was to create a charcoal draft version of the portrait. This draft allowed me to explore my options in composition, values, and proportion without the stress of it being the final piece. During this process, I used both a hand mirror and photo reference. But finally, it was time to move on to the real portrait, and the deadline was rapidly approaching. I was starting to feel the pressure, but I had no time to spare, so I sharpened and sanded my pencils and got ready for a long night of drawing. First, I blocked out the basic forms of the head and the hair. Then I moved on to facial features such as the eyes, nose, and mouth, adding more detail after each pass. Finally, it was time to move on to the rendering. Though I was working fairly quickly, I decided to use a different rendering technique for portions of the face. Instead of blending out the highlights and shadows with a blending stump, I instead used various hatch marks to define the forms of the face. So if you look closely at the drawing, you can see these unblended lines, which create a sort of layered, fuzzy texture. This actually ended up being my favorite element of the drawing. So after hours of work and a really long night, I finished my portrait. So I carefully tucked it into my portfolio, and it was ready for my final class. I made this portrait last year, and it's interesting to look back on it, because I made a total of 3 self-portraits during the 3 years I attended here at Saddleback, and they've all become these sort of time capsules to different points in my life. When I look at one of these portraits, I can clearly remember how I felt when I drew them. Making a self-portrait every year is an incredibly rewarding experience. Not only are they a sort of visual record, but they serve as a mirror to your past self, so you can see how far you've come. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. It's always so fascinating to me to hear about the creative process for both the writers and the artists.
In keeping with the floral motif sprinkled throughout the pages of Wall, Petal by Petal focuses on flowers. But Emily Martin's poem goes much deeper in its exploration of emotional odyssey rendered through intricate metaphors. We're pleased to feature Emily reading her verse.
Here at Saddleback, I'm a second-year student and I'm majoring in English, emphasis on creative writing. And when I wrote this poem, I didn't really intend on it being read by anyone else. It actually was a letter to someone near and dear to me, and I was encouraged to submit it to the Saddleback Literary Wall when I was in a creative writing class with Professor Suki Fisher. So without further ado, I'll just begin reading it. Lay me down inside your bones and embrace our entirety. Hear the flutters of heart-beating bosoms, feel the wind, a tornado in thy breathless lungs. Exhaling emboldened courage, inhaling blissful adoration. I, a weightless petal, flightless, deprived of your wind, rooted only in thine arms, stemmed only within thy legs. Flowers blossom, sprouting fingertips, caress a ruby rose bud, ruby as thy lips, ruby as a gem, a treasure in my jeweled chest. Palmistry. Fortune foretold a mystic fate. When 2 roads connect and heart on the line, souls attach, branch to vine. I, my gardener, prune my overgrowth, shave the pinnacle of my reality into a masterpiece. Let it be known. Every breath for you, every step for you, my best for you. Oh, Picasso with serrated scissors, strip away blockage after blockage. See me. With blindfolded eyes, see me. Let my flesh fall with roses as you prune, restore with stronger leaves. When winter comes around, see me. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, Emily. Lily Reed, our next featured writer, could not be here in person because she's attending UC Santa Cruz. Instead, we're fortunate that Lily could join us virtually through her pre-recorded introduction to her compelling fictional narrative.
My name is Lily Reed. I'm currently a student at UC Santa Cruz studying literature. I just transferred here from Saddleback, where I studied English. I had an amazing time. And I started writing Red in November of last year, and I came up with the idea for it with how people, especially women, will change their appearance in order to reinvent themselves, like by dyeing their hair. And I wanted to explore how a character would do this intentionally in order to reflect how she's feeling inside after feeling muzzled for so long. And red is a color that is often associated with anger. And I wanted to use this color to explore this character's rage surrounding her feelings of rage of being a woman, and how that can sometimes be a challenging thing depending on the different experience. And the story was very therapeutic for me to write. I had an amazing time writing it and workshopping it, and I hope you enjoy.
We're pleased to present Lizzie Calvano again, this time offering an oral interpretation of an excerpt from Red.
The apartment was so quiet. I like the quiet, but I wasn't used to this kind of silence. I walked back into the bathroom, where the bathtub was a mess, with red splattered all inside of it. The red was deep and thick, and it would leave a stubborn stain. I'm not entirely sure why I chose red as my new hair color, other than the opportunity to use it presented itself to me. As lovely as red is, it's extremely messy. I looked around to see how much of a mess the rest of my bathroom was. There was red splattered on the floor, on the countertops, all over my towels, just everywhere. Despite all this, something about my red-stained hands bothered me the most. I turned to the mirror and stared at myself, raking my fingers through my hair. They didn't comb through easily, getting snagged on knots from the thick color that I caked in, ensuring a lasting effect. I leaned forward on the white marble countertop, examining my reflection. How many times have I stood in this spot getting ready for the day, getting unready, or even just staring at myself until I couldn't recognize the person looking back at me. I like to watch myself cry sometimes, just to see what I look like. The worst is when I have to get ready, but I can't stop crying like a leaky faucet that won't turn off. Tears smudging my mascara, streaking my foundation, ruining the painting that I delicately craft every single day, ruining the illusion. When I brought my attention back to my reflection, I noticed I was actually crying. Tears glistened down my cheeks, following their familiar pattern on my face. I felt sad for the girl before me. I turned up the corners of my mouth to smile, reassuring her that we were turning over a new leaf. After tonight, I would emerge into the world a new person. I would no longer need the old illusion to protect me. Everything I had known was a lie. My life was a lie. I could rebuild myself. I glanced down at the drops of red on the countertops. Red has a universal meaning, along with those corresponding to each individual shade. Anger. Deep down, I'm a very angry person, but I've always hidden it. My anger has been a little secret that I ignore until I'm far away from all other people, like a dirty mistress that could ruin my life if anyone found out. However, I don't believe my anger is unique. I think it's a feeling specific to women. It's the feeling of burning in our chests as we need to scream or else we'll be devoured by the beast inside us. The beast that feeds off the everyday reassurances of the idea that women are inferior simply because we are women. This beast makes us feel like we are on the brink of madness every single day. I've seen a lot of women, especially younger women, molding their anger into something that's easy or easier for others to digest. We feel the need to put our problems into a pretty little box and tie it with a pretty little bow, so that others, when they peek inside, they're uncomfortable with what they find. But the presentation allows them to minimize the severity of what we're presenting. Our anger is not an aesthetic. It's real, it's raw, and it's dangerous. It's a catastrophic, deadly explosion every time a woman's heart has been struck by someone else's misstep or wrongdoing. I hadn't personally known about this explosion until today. The poor guy couldn't have seen it coming. But how could he have? He didn't know what I knew. When he offhandedly mentioned this morning that he thought I would look nice with blonde hair, the beast was released. I was screaming bloody murder, thrashing around like a wounded animal, throwing anything I could wherever I could. Stuff was everywhere. Outside, in the hallway, on the stairs. It took him a few hours to collect everything, but I wasn't there to see it. I was at the drugstore. Before I turned the shower on to rinse the color out of my hair, I set up a mirror on the shelf so that I could savor this moment, the final step of a personal transformation. Once I was sure that I would be able to see myself clearly, I turned the shower on and stepped inside. I held my hand out to the water, which was cold, but warming up little by little. I turned around to face the mirror. I watched myself slowly step backward into the streaming water. Red was everywhere. It was a deep, thick red. It glistened down my cheeks, all over my face. It poured down my neck, onto my shoulders, through the fabric of my shirt. It was in my eyes. It was in my mouth with a sort of metallic taste. I looked in the mirror as the red got darker and thicker the further I went into the water. I closed my eyes and completely submerged myself. I pictured the red cleansing me as it dripped down my skin. I opened my eyes and smiled at myself in the mirror as more and more red streamed out of my hair. I began posing again, turning my head left and right. I ran my hands through my hair, squeezing out more and more red. I started giggling at just how silly I was to let myself believe that I should be ashamed by my anger. I was so silly to lock those feelings away out of fear of making those around me uncomfortable. I started laughing. I could feel the red, hot rage running through my fingers, streaming down my face. This is what happens when the beast that once devoured us becomes our ally. This is the aftermath of the boiling, bubbling explosion. I get to play with the leftover pieces. My body felt numb. The only thing I could feel was red.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Our next work is Gentle Fever, another poem that was set to music through our joint venture with Professor Ariel Alexander's music composition class. After Paige Cousin introduces herself, you'll hear original music composed by Justin Dabmedjool to accompany the poet's resonant rendition of her lyrical exploration of romantic torment.
Hi, I'm Paige Cousin. I am also attending Cal State Long Beach. I'm a nursing student there, but I graduated this last spring from Saddleback. Love it here. It's so nice being back today. It's a little weird coming up here without anything in my hands, but I guess when you write something and you give it to awesome, incredible people to publish, it kind of is out of your hands. So, and I found that in this experience, especially with the people who created, there are several people who composed music for the piece. I was so honored and blown away by people looking at my work and interpreting it in all these different ways and creating something so beautiful. I'm so incredibly honored. And Justin, is Justin here today? No?
Don't know.
Well.
But he will be able to see it on video.
Okay, great. Well, Justin, I'm so very thankful for the music you created. And yeah, I'm honored. Yeah, I hope you enjoy.
I pray to none that I may know what calls to man to let love grow. Fear is lesser known to this. Lost, eternal, my abyss here echoes affection true. Muffled is the sound, blurry is the hue. Gaze still upon my harbored soul. In the palms of a tempered fool, I held my breath at your witness. Wanted you, turned and missed it. Wait to see me fail you, love. Deserting every gracious kiss, avoiding love's truest bliss. Falling still into it. I'd sooner to enemy drawn. Give them lands and give them pawns, than have them take what I have meager. A willful love, a gentle figure.
Thank you. What a beautiful poem, and so beautifully rendered. Thank you. Wall has featured striking and thought-provoking images from photography student Saba Anushapur in 2 previous issues. Graceful represents the 3rd year in a row that her work has been presented in our journal. Saba will share with you information about herself and her creative process.
Hi everyone, my name is Saba Anushapur. I was born and raised in Iran and I moved in United States in 2008. I have bachelor degree in graphic design, but I have been always into photography. I started taking photography class in Saddleback College in 2020. I'm honored to be here tonight to tell you the story behind my work. According to American Society of Cancer, a woman's risk of getting ovarian cancer during her lifetime is about 1 in 78. And I was one of those women. Back in 2017, shortly after my immigration status was settled, I was hit with the terrifying news: ovarian cancer stage 2, putting my life on hold to focus on something so unpleasant. And enduring both physical and mental pain was very difficult. I had to undergo a series of challenging treatment processes involving self-injection twice a day for a year. Convincing myself to push needles into my belly was a bitter experience. But these needles were helping me rid myself of an unwelcome intruder. It was a mixed feeling I had never dealt with before. Several months into my battle, I decided to preserve the used syringes. I knew I wanted to create something meaningful with them, but I was unsure what it would be. Until last year, when I had to create a self-portrait for my photography class under the guidance of Professor Ryan Evan, I found my inspiration, and I talked to Jim Langford, senior lab technician, about the many details. With his encouragement, I decided to make it happen. I retrieved the box where I had been keeping the syringes. As I gazed into the mirror, I realized that these needles had given me my health back and that they had given me the opportunity to live again. I began to think about how I could incorporate these needles into my self-portrait to symbolize that I had reclaimed my health, strength, and life through the painful medications. And I am profoundly thankful and filled with gratitude for that. In the final day of our studio class, with invaluable assistance from Jim, I brought my artistic vision to life, a vision that I had within me for 5 years. Inspired by classic church painting, I made a tiara out of syringes to reflect the light that is shining from above. I decided to pose in a way where I am looking up at the light of hope to ask for strength. My hair on my shoulders reflects my gratitude for my hair loss through chemotherapy. The syringes on my breast symbolize one of the surgeries I had undergone. And the truth is, we often take our health for granted and fail to appreciate it until we lose it. It's a gift we often overlook.
Thank you, Saba, for sharing your story. It was beautiful. All right. So next is Kat Johnson. Kat Johnson's our next presenter, held positions of fiction editor and copy editor for the 2020 edition of WAL. We're grateful for her contribution to this year's staff and serving as a literary associate.
Hello. It's weird. I haven't been here since June because I've been taking a mental health break from school currently. But I'm here at Saddleback and I'm studying to get a degree in journalism. But I mainly just want to be a writer because I love writing. I love stories. Like from when I was little, I just like was totally engrossed in like the Nancy Drew books. Those are like one of the first books I can remember that I just absolutely loved reading and made me want to write. And I've been with WAL since 2022, and that's all thanks to Professor Fisher. I loved your class, and she encouraged everyone in that class to like go into WAL, and so I was there last year. Unfortunately, I didn't. Well, I also had a personal narrative, but this year I have a poem, which I'm going to read to you guys. And this poem means a lot to me because I wrote this in 2021 to, my now boyfriend when he was in boot camp, because he was just going into the military. He's a Marine. And I care about him deeply, and it was his birthday. And, it kind of sucks being in boot camp on your birthday. So I wrote a poem to him about one of my favorite things of all time, something he also likes, which is Over the Garden Wall, if you've ever heard of that series. And I was really fixated on this one quote in the show. And I just started writing about it, and it turned into a poem. It was something that I gifted him with. I attributed it to both of us, and fortunately, he can't be here because he's working right now, but I hope he gets to see this on video when it's recorded. Is the dove never to meet the sea in want of the odious mountain? So says a poetic character with a tall red hat. I could compare myself to this character, especially with the slipping of confidence in their craft, unsure if their words would ever quite reach the person they keep in mind. The dove never reaching the sea, due to the odious mountain of their insecurities. Yet the feelings are true with careful placement, the dove representing the flight and freedom they truly desire, and the sea, a breathtaking cacophony, and something that brings the dove's desire to understand what lies below. For among the torrent there is life, and not only the sparkling sea foam that sits above. They curl and furl amongst one another, dipping at angles to meet their rises and falls from water to air. Then this character would stop and compact the manuscript of these ideas into a ball, pressing down all the insecurities into all the unsaid words that were thrown with the rest. Rewriting again and stripping more of the original meaning, the figures becoming less and less like the sea and the dove. But you and I know this isn't about those characters. This is about us, myself using a fictional figure to communicate all that I think and feel, my own secret passage through the mountain so that I could fly the 3-hour journey to the sea in less than 2 minutes. There is no real mountain. I need only blink, and here you are. And so I come to you with my feathers plucked and your tides risen, but nevertheless I will gladly float in your waves as the breeze from the mountain pass cools our spirits.
Thank you, Kat. Our final presenter, Christina Gramling, served as a personal narrative editor and fiction editor for this year's issue, but her dedication to WAL extends way beyond those titles as she has continued promoting the journal at on-campus events and posting to our Instagram. We're very fortunate to have Christina here to close the evening by sharing her poignant and powerful personal narrative, A Beautiful Goodbye.
Okay, my name is Christina Gramling, and I'm very happy to be here. The piece that I'm sharing tonight, I wrote as a way to celebrate the relationship I felt so grateful to have with my father, who was, last year, he was hospitalized in November, and he passed in the beginning of December, and we were very, very close. And after I came back to the United States, there was this was an opportunity in the class to process my feelings about losing someone that was so special to me. I've been fortunate to follow my passion in storytelling and very, like some of us here said, to very deeply appreciating the spaces, the safe spaces that we found in creative writing here at Saddleback. And, we've amazing opportunities for self-expression and healing, as we saw in some of the articles here tonight. A beautiful goodbye. In the next few days after my arrival, my dad's health declined significantly. A white, cold, and clean ritual of monitors, family visits, doctors, nurses, medical procedures, hospital food, and World Soccer Tournament games on the TV became a fast-speed short film in my memory. Between nights poorly slept, I stood alone in bewilderment and disbelief, a witness to events unfolding in front of me and over which I had absolutely no control. The lung infection that did not recede, the breathing that could not happen, the pain that would not go away, my dad who spoke no more. No one has ever made me feel so unconditional love like him. My sister Anna, my brother Célio, and I were taking turns spending nights with Dad in the hospital. It would be my turn to spend the following 2 nights with him right after the painful conversation with the doctor. I knew this would be the most difficult nights of my life. I was so tired by then that my immediate internal reaction was to find an excuse to get out of my shift. I asked my brother, "Can we switch nights, Célio? I'm not feeling well." From somewhere back in my memory, the words I had learned as a child in religious education came to my mind. Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Yet may your will be done, not mine. I too wanted to ask for mercy and reach out to that celestial Father who seemed mysteriously silent. Please, not me. Have I not done enough? I do not think I can, and I do not want to do this. I had learned in the past to seek solitude when reaching a crossroad like this. So I told my mom I was going out for lunch by myself. I focused on my conscious breathing, matching it with my steps as I had learned in a mindfulness retreat in New York earlier that year. As I was walking, the words came to my mind. Heels, inhale, toes, exhale. Heels, inhale, toes, exhale. I whispered to myself my favorite mantra. Inhale, inspiration, Christina. Exhale, expectations. Inhale, inspiration. You exhale, expectation. As I walked around the busy neighborhood, my pace began to slow down and a deep sense of peace and surrendering settled in. It had to be me. I was the only one that knew exactly what he needed to cross the river to the other side. That was the reason why I was there. It had to be me. That Saturday evening, it was just me and my dad with oxygen tubes in his nose and me. At 2 a.m., I opened my eyes with his voice calling me, "Minha filha, me dá pouco de água." My daughter, just give me some water. I poured some water into his dry mouth with the help of a spoon. I cannot sleep anymore. Can you help me fall asleep? I feel so tired. I know, Dad. I know. I massage his feet and ankles gently. Let's try something else. At 4 o'clock, again, he awakened, telling me, "I cannot do this anymore, minha filha. I am so tired. I cannot stand this anymore." Dad, I cannot take this suffering from you, but I can be here with you. I placed my cheek next to his and asked him, "Remember the sound of music? Tell me about things that make you happy. Tell me about happy moments." Sitting on the front porch in the farm, looking at the hills and listening to the birds and the cows in the pasture. "My turn," I said, walking to the view above the pond, overlooking the house and the fields. He said, "Putting logs on the wood-burning stove with my grandkids, sitting by the barbecue place, sitting by the fire pit at night, sharing ghost stories." That got deeper and deeper into his sleep and finally took his last breath at 11 a.m. on December 5th. As I was holding his left hand, my mom his right hand, and Célio, my brother, lovingly touching his feet. He and I drank that bitter chalice together, one helping the other, as he crossed to the other side. Where is he now? I don't know. It is such a mystery. The death of a parent, I realize now, no matter how rehearsed in one's rational mind, despite all preparations, can stir deep things inside us. Like an earthquake tremor that dislodges structures, setting off waves of moments long forgotten, feelings until then unnamed. I am embracing the waves of grief, the tears and the tightness in my chest, as well as the laughter and smiles revisiting happy moments. I am discovering there is a loving energy that lingers on. Even when its source is no longer physically present, I'm learning to say goodbye and hello again to enable this beautiful energy to flow through me. On the way to the airport in Rio to catch my plane back to California, unable to contain my sorrow as I sobbed like a little girl, I shared with the Uber driver how hard it had been to say goodbye to my dad. The man just listened during the whole trip. When we parked the car, he got out, helped me with my suitcase, looked at me and said, this thing you had with your dad, it was really beautiful, very beautiful. I hugged him, too overwhelmed with emotion to say anything, and walked inside the airport. Yes, it was, sir. Yes, it was.
Thank you, Christina. That was a beautiful performance. And that concludes the public reading for WAL 2023. Thank you for being such a great audience.
We appreciate all you who presented, everyone who worked behind the scenes to make this event possible, and all of you for coming tonight and being a great audience, and for reading and supporting WAL, and for sharing this very special communal celebration of the superb literature and art produced by our students. Thank you so much, and hope to do this again next year.
You might wake up some morning to the sound of something moving past your window in the wind. And if you're quick enough to rise, you'll catch the fleeting glimpse of someone's fading shadow. Out on the new horizon, you may see the floating motion of a distant pair of wings. And if the sleep has left your ears, you might hear footsteps running through an open meadow. Don't be concerned, it will not harm you. It's only me pursuing something I'm not sure.